What's your name?
Therese.
Therese Ballavat.
Carol. Tell me you know what you're doing.
I never did.
And then it changed.
She's still my wife. I love her. It shouldn't be like this.
I know.
I love Highsmith's writing. I encountered it when I was first working on The Talented Mr. Ripley with the late, great Minghella. And so I knew how rich a territory it was to create characters, because the subterranean nature that she writes about, the sort of unpalatable, dark, mysterious sides of being human, she mines so beautifully. And so it's fantastic source material for an actor. But you can love a screenplay, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make a great film unless you've got a great director. So it wasn't really until Todd Haynes came on board that it became possible.
I first received Phyllis's adaptation of Price of Salt as Carol, the film, the script, and read the novel all at the same time. This was in May of 2013. And at that time, Cate was already attached to the project. So I'm reading this extraordinary book, and I'm reading Phyllis's beautiful script. And of course, I'm seeing Cate. So it's indelible to me that she would play Carol.
It's a tricky book because it's basically the unreliable point of view of one character, who is the character who's falling in love, responding to the world around her, which includes all the people in Carol's life. And Carol herself, who is shadowy in the novel, necessarily, so that we, the reader, can project whoever we like into that. It's actually quite brilliant stroke. But you can't do that in a film. Well, I suppose you could, but it'd be a very different kind of film.
But ultimately, that novel affected me. It was really a revelation. I didn't know that piece of work by Patricia Highsmith. It stands outside her crime milieu, basically. And yet, the parallels to the criminal minds that are usually the subjects of her movies was so pronounced. But in this case, it was the mind of somebody falling in love. And it sort of showed a similar kind of almost pathology, where everything, a situation in which you're reading every sign and every gesture and every tiny event for its meaning and interpreting everything as a sign, just like the criminal does, sort of anticipating their fate or guilt and the outcome of their status. And in this case, it's the status of how you stand in relationship to the person you're falling in love with. So there's something really beautiful about that and really universal. I think that was what drew me to it.
I wonder if you might help me find this doll for my daughter.
Bright Betsy. Oh, she cries and wets herself. But I'm afraid we're all out of stock.
Oh, left it too long.
Well, we have plenty of other dolls and all kinds, actually.
Right. What was your favorite doll when you were 4?
Me? Well, not many, to be honest. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to smoke on the sales floor.
Oh, of all... Forgive me, shopping makes me nervous.
That's all right, working here makes me nervous.
It's just such a beautiful love story at its core. The fact that it's 2 women was also very interesting to me, but at the end of the day, I just thought it captured so beautifully sort of falling in love. And you know, it was a coming-of-age story for my character, and also Cate's character, Carol, is also coming of age in a way, in a different sort of, she's moving into a sort of new phase of her life. And so, and the two of us, how the two of us helped each other do that, I just thought it was really beautiful.
The power of the film for me, which I didn't really know until I saw the finished product, was it's a film about falling in love. I mean, yes, it's an important pediment to the consummation of the relationship, with the fact that both the protagonists are of the same gender, and it's set in the 50s when, of course, that sort of love was illegal. But it's also this incredible age gap between the women and the vast difference of their experience in their difference in class was keeping them apart. But I did, I loved you could feel the chemistry come off Phyllis's screenplay. And she created, which Todd enhanced, these beautiful moments of suspension, the silence between the characters, which you could cut with a knife, which, the subtext that you can fill, those moments with as an actor, I found really exciting, and you could feel that off the page.
It's a rumination on the many different phases of a deep, intense love, and I think that's all that all of us could have hoped to achieve, is to somehow make an audience re-experience that, or, well, hopefully re-experience it. I hope everyone who sees it has at least had that experience once.
Desire needs something to fight against and to push back against. And there's restraints that we see the characters experiencing. There's restraints that we feel from their different sort of economic realms that they live in, ages, power dynamic between the two of them. And there's inequality, there's imbalance, and it separates the women. And there's a lot going on in each separate woman's story. And I think you keep wanting to cross those boundaries as a viewer. And so the chemistry is maybe something the viewer is bringing to the movie.
I'm starved. Bon appetit. What do you do on Sundays?
Nothing in particular. What do you do?
Oh, nothing lately. I mean, if you'd like to come visit me sometime, you're welcome to. At least there's some pretty country around where I live. Would you like to come visit me this Sunday?
Yes.
What a strange girl you are.
Why?
Flung out of space.
It's great when you're surprised or ambushed by something and it comes off the other actor. You can do all the homework in the world, which of course an audience is deeply disinterested in, but if a character or an actor does something that you respond to it, it's acting, reacting. That's what it is, and maybe that just comes from doing the theatre. I sort of, even in a close-up, even if you can't actually look because of the position of the camera, you can't look into another actor's eyes. You have to remember what they gave you because the scene exists between you. It's not an act of will of one actor. I think acting happens in a bit like dance. It's that suspended moment between two people.
In the restaurant, certainly, you say, she takes in how that is interpreted is entirely up to the actors and the director, and Todd could have chosen to shoot that in any number of ways. He could have shot their backs or in weird long shots, which, would have been a different thing. But I think because everyone was so aligned in sensibility and aesthetic rigor of a certain sort, that there was never any question. This is the way it has to be. This looks the way it has to be. And I hope in the final version of it, there's a sense of, yes, wow, yeah, I can't imagine this being any other way.
It was a beautifully written script, and I think the changes that she made in the story and in some of the characters and their occupations and so forth were so thoughtful. There were a couple things in the book, some tensions between the two women that I started to talk to Phyllis about, and about putting back into the script, and she was like, yeah, yes, thank you, because I think in the process of trying to get this thing made, you're trying to appeal to the various interests out there. And some of those tensions or anxieties may have lost a little bit of their force. And she was really excited that we were going to go back to the book in some places.
When Todd came aboard, he was basically very interested in the point of view, and suggested that we might best start with a framing device a la Brief Encounter, primarily, but I think there were others that we talked about. And so our process became, I would go away and come up with something, and that would be good, or I'd work on it a little more. But it was very quick, because by that time, the script was primarily there, save for what the particular obsessions of the director are. And I knew the material so well that I could work quickly. And boy, did I want to, because it'd been already so many years. So let's get this going.
One great thing, Todd did many great things, but he does invite you absolutely in a very collaborative way into the visual world of the film. So you realise before you even set foot on set the kind of atmosphere that you're going to be operating in. Because it's not just the words you say, it's not just what you wear, it's the environments that you're going to be performing in. A bit like the mise en scène for a theatre production. And we filmed in Cincinnati, and there's a lot of untouched period homes which almost feel like they've been boarded up. And so the air is really still and quite tomb-like in some of these environments. And so we toured all the locations we were going to be filming in. And so he and Rooney and I, or whoever was in the scene, Sarah Paulson, Carl Chandler, wonderful actors who are in the film, we spent time in these environments and sort of rehearsed in those environments. So we imbibed the atmosphere. Because something I love about the film visually is the austerity. It comes out of the post-World War II austerity. We think about the 50s as being an explosion of materialism, but in fact it was quite austere compared to how materialistic most of our and populated and busy our environments are today. And it mirrored the emotional froideur that I think that that environment that the 50s are in, you didn't express your feelings. It was inappropriate to talk about how you felt, particularly the love that these women were experiencing. So the locations often were one-to-one with what was going on in the interior of the women. So I found that very useful.
We looked at a lot of, photojournalism and art photography from the time, and Saul Leiter was a clear jumping-off point as a visual artist, color photographer, mid-century New York City-based, because he shot through windows and glass and precipitation and elements of weather which would diffuse the image and obstruct the frame. But it almost makes the desire more pronounced, because there's obstacles between where you are and what you want to see. So you feel the boundaries and the things in the way of what you want. So I think that became a useful way of sort of externalizing or visualizing what's going on inside the subjectivities.
That feeling of falling in love, how do you let that come across? How do you describe that? It's not a tangible thing, and I think that's the other thing Todd did visually that was so brilliant, is he got that feeling across just from, little things. Like there's a scene with me and Carol driving, and it feels almost dreamlike. You're seeing all these close-ups and details of her face and her clothes that, Therese would be honing in on, and then you hear sort of her muffled sound of her voice mixed in with the music, and he evokes that feeling of falling in love through his visuals, and I think he was able to do that more than you'd be able to sort of act it.
There are moments, though, of such acute and sort of universal expression of feelings that we've all had when they're in the novel, when they're driving through the tunnel for the first time, the Lincoln Tunnel, to go to New Jersey. Therese says, or the writer says, Therese, she wished the tunnel would collapse on top of the two of them, killing them both so their bodies could be dragged out one after the next. And it was just like, that is the feeling of being in love. Like, you want time to stop right there. And you want a kind of fatal, melodramatic end, and to sort of reveal this coupling, for the world to see. It's so simple, but so incredibly astute.
So many people fall in love in different ways, and it's not always easy. But if it's real, it's certainly exciting. But I think it's interesting you're talking about facial gestures. I think deep love, real love, you actually lose a sense of yourself. That's why it's described as falling in love. It happens between you, and the physical boundaries, the sense of your own skin is shed. There's a naked quality whether or not you're in bed with one another or not. I mean, you're emotionally naked in front of that person, with that person.
I always get kind of obsessed with my image books that I put together for my films. And although those are really meant first as sort of communications to my directors of photography, and then the production designer and the costume designer and all the visual partners, they become really useful to the actors. And so those visual references they inform them in ways you might not expect. They really give you a specific sense of place and history and even temperature. Like you can sort of feel how the clothes and the skin and the bodies might respond to being in these specific settings.
If you look at the book now, it looks exactly like the film. And on top of that, just, having all of that and then, all these film references that he had me watch and the costumes, you really knew sort of what world you were stepping onto before you got there, which is, really helpful because you want to make sure that as actors that you're in the same movie, that you're in the same world. And he made that very easy for us. Phyllis had a really difficult job at adapting something like that because how can you, unless you have voiceover throughout the entire film, it's hard to be in someone's head like that. And so she brilliantly changed, in the book, Therese is a stage designer, and in the film, she's a photographer. And so that really sort of added this way into her mind because you get to, she sees the world in a very visual way as a photographer. And also, the script did have sort of all these like flashes of details, and you could tell that was that the way they were going to shoot it, that was the way they were going to get sort of into her POV and into her mind. And Todd did that brilliantly.
Some directors speak to actors independently, whereas it felt that there was as if somehow giving a note to an actor is a moment of shame, like they're doing something wrong. Whereas he would speak very freely in front of everybody. So we're all doing this thing together. There was no wrong. There was just, let's try it like this. And so it felt from take to take, and we didn't have very many takes because of the time restrictions, but it felt like we were building on things. So, it's like he's just subtly moving the rudder, but very, very interested in what everyone has to bring to the table.
Everything is the result of a lot of planning and advance preparation, as much communication as possible between the creative departments and the actors. But in the end, you're subject to the sort of panics of the day and the limitations of a low-budget shooting schedule and things that you really wish were not factors in your creative process, but they always are. And so there's some serendipity, there's some unexpected events that sort of propel, we have to get this now, And so it's hard to look back and go, oh yes, I, sat back with my, pipe and pointed to that moment and was so thoughtful about it. And sometimes it's just like a hysterical, crazy effort to get what you need to complete your cut.
It's bad form to cry at your own movie, but you can't help it. There's just a life of its own without sounding so airy. I don't mean it in any kind of weird, new agey way, but the way those women look at each other without doing anything, really. I think that's what makes me get emotional, and everyone around us, and the actors too.
It's such a labour of love, and it was. It took a long time to be realised, but now that it's come together, it feels like it couldn't have happened with any other group of people in any other way at any other time, and that in itself is special. And I'm really excited for an audience to see it. I think Todd has made a very beautiful, beautiful film.